Hello, and welcome to this first episode of All About the Avengers, your new documentary series devoted to one of the most fascinating works in British television. We are a group of French researchers and enthusiasts. For several years, we've been producing a documentary show called Au Sujet de, in which we select a theme or an episode and explore it in depth. Each video is built on extensive research and features richly illustrated, meticulously editing, often drawing on rare or little-known documents. Over time, this approach has allowed us to gather a loyal fan base, delighted to rediscover the Avengers from a fresh perspective. But because our show was primarily in French language, we remained at a distance from the series' original audience. After several months of thought and preparation, we decided to adapt our episodes in English. My name is Joris, and I'm delighted to present the work of Eric and Antoine by narrating this international version. To launch this new adventure, we chose to begin with a legendary episode, The Cybernauts, a true landmark of the series, born from the vivid imagination of Philip Levene. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoy this first episode of All About the Avengers. It isn't hard to imagine British television viewers felt on the evening of the 16th of October 1965 when they saw that door shutter for the first time. It is the same mix of dread and fascination that still grips us 60 years afterwards. The violence of this introduction doesn't simply represent the first steps of one of the most mythical creatures in the history of television, but carries with it a new identity for the series which, after gently bubbling over, leaps out of its box to smash everything from the cellar to the attic. But after this destructive enterprise, like a complete shattering of the dramatic legacy of the first 3 seasons, there is every reason to wonder about the nature of this new vindictive force that is undermining the foundations of our Avengerland. Indeed, this character, who emerges like a repressed soul, helps to initiate a new chapter in the series' history. Like a key character, this new creature carries with it the artistic ambitions, references, and above all, the themes that will dominate in Season 4. To grasp this new direction in production, we need to get to the heart of the machine and understand what sets this new Cybernaut in motion. By switching to 35mm, the series is taking a closer look at cinema and seeking to emulate its main genres: horror, thriller, comedy, and above all science fiction, which dominated the previous decade and which is gradually gaining its credentials. Up until now, the series has skirted the edges of this genre, thanks to plots linked to technology. But even when a calculating robot is at the heart of a plot,
you talk about him as if he were a person, not a machine.
Technology remains above all a backdrop, or the object that motivates the story's antagonists. This is an area that the producers of this new season, Julian Wintle, Albert Fennell, and Brian Clemens, wish to explore further, moving away from the overly realistic straitjacket of the series to allow it to venture into the frontiers of the mind and technology. To do this, the production team is looking for new writers. While listening to the radio drama Just Before Midnight, Brian Clemens' attention was called by the name of one of the show's regular playwrights, Philip Levene.
A Chilling Tale by Philip Levene.
Philip Levene was 38 when he was asked to join the creative teams of the Avengers. Trained at the Webber Douglas School of Dramatic Art, the young Levene initially set his sights on a career as an actor, playing a succession of extra roles until 1957. For health reasons, Levene was forced to leave film sets and began writing scripts for series episodes, foreign television films, and above all radio plays. Titillated by death, which he saw on a daily basis while working in a morgue, Levene developed bizarre plots in his stories, bordering on the fantastic or science fiction side, as in his novel City of the Hidden Eyes, or in this episode of The Invisible Man, for which he used radar in 1958 to thwart our hero's transparency. Despite his desires, he was directed more towards soap operas or crime thrillers, as in Ghost Squad, a series in which he almost crossed paths with Brian Clemens.
They work alone, in danger and in shadow, unrecognized by friend and enemy alike. They are the operators of the almost legendary Ghost Squad.
When he was informed of the new direction of the Avengers, Philip Levene finally had the opportunity to explore themes that were dear to him and delivered a work that was original and relatively different from what he had offered up to now. Nevertheless, despite the production's decision to turn towards more science fiction scenarios, Philip Levene's first attempts came up against the material realities of the program. His first script, The Disappearance of Admiral Nelson, was judged too fanciful and put on the shelf, only to be reworked 2 years later as Mission Highly Improbable. His second script, The Man-Eater of Sarah Green, was well received, but was postponed during the production stage, as not to hit audiences used to the old Avengers formula. The third attempt proved to be the right one, sent to production in December 1964. The Cybernauts has presented itself as a more balanced script, less difficult to direct, and which gradually introduced the science fiction elements of the story. For this story, Levene turned his attention to a key figure in 1950s cinema, the robot character. When he picked it up, the word robot was only 4 decades old. While the concept is much older, Metal Man can be found as far back as the mythological forges of Hephaestus. The word robot, coined in 1920, comes at just the right time to designate this new thing, propelled by the industrial age. We owe it to the Czech playwright Karel Čapek and his play Ruhr, in which the robots, far from being technological concerns, form an allegory of the class struggle, individuals at the frontiers of humanity, seeking to revolt against their creators, a desire for emancipation that characterizes the beginnings of the robot in fiction, particularly in Russia. Alexander Andreevsky's Loss of Sensation in 1935 shows us automatons with no free will, guided by radio or saxophone, by an anti-capitalist who ends up killed by his own creations. Then there is Fritz Lang's Metropolis, with its evil Maria, a machine used, among other things, to deceive the masses and eradicate any social movement. From the outset, the robot has been used in art for ideological purposes, crystallizing man's view of technology at a given moment. It is not always a negative view when we explore the works of the futurists Picabia or Fernand Léger, who all shared a fascination for the machine and its workings. But very quickly things became concrete in the fields of robotics. After a few mechanical automata that fascinated the royal court, such as Leonardo da Vinci's Lion, the development of electricity enabled this discipline in order to make prodigious progress. A distinction was made between automata, which repeated their tasks mechanically, and robots which interacted with their environment using sensors. Thus, in 1912, John Hammond and Benjamin Meisner designed the first robot, an electric dog that could be guided by light sources, to which the robot dog of Cybernauts, guided by whistling, probably pays homage. Showing 40 years later the generalization of this technology in a field as banal as that of toys.
Got it. Good boy, Gaylord.
Humanoid trials soon followed, with Eric the talking robot in 1928, and above all Electro by the American engineer Joseph Barnett, presented at the 1939 New York World's Fair, leaving its mark on an entire generation.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Why, he's almost human.
If he wasn't so big, I'd take him for an engineer.
From then on, the robot became an amusing pop figure seen in the same year at the cinema with The Wizard of Oz, and quickly made into a toy, much to the delight of baby boomers, whose childhood was largely lulled by this dream of metal.
Meet Robert, the talking robot.
It was with this generation that Philip Levene grew up, sometimes challenged by Gort, the imposing humanoid robot from the day the Earth stood still, but above all the media tidal wave of the likable Robbie from the Forbidden Planet.
You are a robot, aren't you?
That is correct, sir.
For your convenience, I am monitored to respond to the name Robbie.
But it was mostly scientific news that left their mark on Philip Levene's mind, with robotics gradually migrating into the field of cybernetics. Cybernetics, the science of communication and control systems in humans and machines, was developed between 1942 and 1953 through Macy's multidisciplinary conferences and the works of mathematician Norbert Wiener. It was Wiener who coined the term cybernetics from the Greek hubernetike, Plato's term for steering a ship. This etymology explains why the great thinker's mechanical brain was named Plato. It was around that time that the fantasy of a robot brain emerged, a machine capable of thinking for itself and which could rival human intelligence. This fantasy was fueled by the development of calculating machines, which left contemporaries wonder about the cognitive possibilities of future machines.
Correctly programmed, the machine could answer questions on finance, science, even military and political matters. It could supplant the human brain entirely. I'm theorizing, of course.
So what does Philip Levene's Cybernaut add to all this pre-existing mythology? First of all, the transposition of this creature to television. Apart from cultural references to Robbie and a few Twilight Zone episodes, robots have been surprisingly absent from the small screen until now. Some might retort that Doctor Who's Daleks have fascinated British viewers since December 1963. There are two nuances to this assertion. The first is that Doctor Who, with its very marvellous treatment of technology, has not really treated these creatures as robots, avoiding many of the themes associated with them. And this to the point of revealing that these metal salt shakers were nothing more than convertible armor concealing real organic creatures. The second is that despite this allegory of fascism and their chilling ideology,
exterminated,
like Robbie the robot, the Daleks have left their mark on the subconscious through their unusual form and have very quickly been turned into a sympathetic pop culture object. This is not the case here with Cybernaut. Here, it is a truly chilling creature. This is the first time in fiction that the robot is not just an exotic attraction, but a real antagonist treated with all the seriousness it requires. A number of decisions relating to the creature's looks are responsible for the menacing quality of this silhouette. Levene abandons the classic geometric designs of contemporary robots for a humanoid creature. The choice of a black coat, hat, and glasses is a clear borrowing from the common figure of the man in black, anonymizing the threat as a silhouette with mysterious contours. This was already the choice of the killer in Mad Love, and above all, Universal's version of the Invisible Man, and reference point for an entire generation, and undoubtedly the origin of the nylon stocking that covers the Cybernaut's head in the first episode. Sidney Ayres, directing for the first time in the series, picks up on Levene's idea of a robot who remains in the shadows and makes it the watchword of his direction. Before his first revelation at the 34th minute, Ayres treats the Cybernaut through synecdoche, through his shadow, his determined step, his object-crushing hand, and above all, through the mess he leaves in his wake.
Big fella.
He also uses a technique pioneered in cinema a few years earlier by Clouseau's The Murderer Lives at Number 21, and especially Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, adopting the killer's point of view. Several shots during the attack on the Cybernaut place the camera in the eyes of a robot assassin, concealing his identity as best as possible, while showing us the terror and powerlessness of the victim. Finally, this desire to keep the Cybernaut out of the spotlight for the first 2/3 of the episode seems to be a legacy of Philip Levene's radio writing, well aware of the listener's attraction to what cannot be seen. While the treatment is frighteningly original, Levene is nonetheless part of the vivid legacy of popular culture, that of the killer robot piloted remotely by a sinister individual. This tradition of a creature designed to do the dirty work has its origins in the golem, humanoid monster made of clay that responds to the orders of its creator. This concept was quickly applied to robotics, with Andre Dide's Mechanical Man featuring a robot remotely controlled by criminals to rob safes. It is in his film that we find the first robot confrontation in the history of cinema, the android of the criminals confronting that of the heroes, in a battle already close to the end of the Cybernauts. As is often the case in this tradition, The robot's creator is usually the victim of his own technology. During the 4 decades in which these anonymous, bulletproof, door-demolishing killer robots were being forged, the figure that most likely inspired Philip Levene was the robot of the mysterious Dr. Satan, a 15-episode soap opera that already featured a mad scientist bent on world domination with his army of robots. As well as the similarity with Armstrong, there is the same type of environment, a screen that locates the android and the overly affectionate side of his Man of Steel. And just as the golem could be reduced to dust by its creator, the Cybernaut becomes perfectly harmless once disconnected. This idea is brought to life by Emma's fingers thrusting, a scene absent from Levene's script, probably the result of some on-set work between Ayers and the actors, in order to add a little sense of humor to this very dark plot. So, our Cybernaut is an empty shell devoid of free will and subject to diabolical masterminds. The notorious Dr. Clement Armstrong. Like his creature, Levene delays the discovery of a great villain of the story. Armstrong remains off-screen throughout the first half of the script and is introduced by Gilbert, colleague of Steed's, who sums up his past at the Ministry in one scene.
Armstrong refused to toe the official line. Had an accident, wrecked the building, lost half his staff and put himself permanently in a wheelchair. And they turfed him out of his job.
Bruised by his experiments and betrayed by his own management, Clements was not the only Armstrong to feel cheated in the aftermath of the Second World War. It is likely that Levene had in mind in writing the script for Cybernauts, case of Dr. Edwin Armstrong, a pioneering scientist in the field of telecommunications and creator of frequency modulation. Robbed of the credit for his inventions by the Radio Corporation of America, Armstrong embarked on a legal battle, which was pursued by his widow Marion after she committed suicide in 1954, as the case was widely publicized until the end of the trial in 1967. Edwin Armstrong's features were well known to the public, so much so that Levene drew on them for his fictional equivalent. In his 50s, bald and overweight, his limpness manifested by a double chin. The other contribution of the real Armstrong to that of the Cybernauts is the importance of telecommunications and radio guidance in the episode. This explains, for example, the choice of christening the Cybernaut Roger. The word Roger is a specific radio communication code, which means that a pilot has received the message from his superior. It fits in well with the idea of a creature taking orders, guided here by a transmitter concealed in a fountain pen, just like the gentle Tobor, who probably inspired Levene to use similar guidance in his episode.
It's all finished. A new transmitter rod built inside a pencil.
The pen is all the more relevant given that it is the scriptwriter's tool and that, behind Armstrong, it is Levene himself who directs the creature in his script. The inspiration of this real case, together with Levene's extensive documentation of current scientific events, gives the Cybernaut a tangible legacy. This creature is not fanciful, it is terribly credible. Levene is so accurate that he uses contemporary technologies, such as integrated circuits and punched cards to fuel the utopias.
Computer is no bigger than a cigarette box. Pocket television. And radios smaller than a wristwatch.
And nightmares of tomorrow.
Well, that kind of music wasn't composed by a computer.
It will be, in time.
The choice of Michael Gough to play Dr. Armstrong lessens Levene's reference to the case, but breathes new life into the Avengers' adversaries. A recurring actor in The Hammer and the films of Powell and Pressburger, Gough, although part of a tradition of villains in wheelchairs, establishes himself as the typical figure of the villain, cold, calculating, disturbing, ruthless, and charismatic. He is above all a negative double of our heroes. He is the anti-Avengers, right down to his physical condition. Like Strangelove, released the same year, the character's infirmity helps to dehumanize him and radicalize him towards totalitarian excesses. The choice of a remote-controlled chair with multiple controls reinforces this character who's turned his back on his humanity.
He's buried himself. under a jungle of gadgetry. Given a choice between Lola Brigida and an electronic calculator, he would choose the equation every time.
Armstrong not only wants to use technology to establish his dominance,
Government by automation. It's the only solution.
he also wants to prove the superiority of his almost religious faith in the machine.
That we human beings are fallible, temperamental, and so often unreliable. The machine, however, is obedient and invariably more competent.
While technology is not sanctioned by the series, its capacity to predate on or alienate man is a frequent warning. Armstrong and his creature appear as two serious shadows to our hero's ideology. Over the course of its episodes, the series has built up its own vision of humanity and has focused on a key contemporary concept, that of the Superman. Forged as early as the 17th century and mainly developed by Friedrich Nietzsche in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the Superman is a man who rises above the others, who separates himself from the mass through his qualities, his will, and his actions. In the face of the secularization of contemporary societies, Superman appears to be a seductive notion that can spur people on to fulfill themselves and become the best version of themselves. And in a way, all our Avengers are Superman, exceptional beings with remarkable qualities, which stand out from the crowd. They embody a positive version of this notion, mainly influenced by its romantic side, as described by Goethe. Strong, highly cultured man, skilled in all things of physical life, holding himself well in hand, having respect for his own individuality, able to venture to fully enjoy nature in all its richness and extent, strong enough for freedom, a man for whom nothing is forbidden anymore, except at least weakness, whether it be called vice or virtue. Such a liberated spirit appears at the center of the universe. In a happy and confident fatalism, I have tithed it Dionysus. Conversely, the Avengers' best adversaries are those who illustrate the excesses of this notion. Used for Machiavellian ends, the Superman can be a means of justifying the superhuman, a reference to the domination of certain individual. The same ideology can therefore lead both to the best in man and to his worst face. The Cybernaut then appears as a deformation of the Superman, a mechanical version designed to enslave the human being with multiple qualities.
He'll be powered by solar energy, and that casing will stand the blast of an atomic shell.
He thus appears as an ideological challenge for our heroes, who will use their superhuman physical and mental capacity to destroy the golden calf. Like Chaplin in modern times, our hero parasitized technology, diverting it from its original function, exploiting its limits and turning it against itself. Steed's scenes in the ventilation system had to this grain of sand in the gears aspect, with a nod to James Bond and the great thinker who already used these ducts as a source of suspense. And in this battle of Superman, Philip Levene adds an original ingredient: the attraction of Japan. Japan emerges as a technological giant, like Hirachi Corporation, Mr. Tosamo's pioneering company in the miniaturization of electrical circuits that Armstrong covets. This domination of the electronics industry can also be seen in Jeffcott's toy shop, decorated with bungaku masks and selling miniature robots, which the Japanese have been flooding the world market with since the early 1960s. This robot is a famous Japanese model, the machine robot, which is highly sought after by collectors, making the prices quoted by Miss Green
£4
a little out of date. Japan also fascinates with its martial arts. In 1963, Sensei Tatsuo Suzuki and his students traveled throughout Europe and the United States to introduce Westerners to a new style of karate, Kyokushinkai. In Great Britain, the practice caught on and several dojos sprang up all over the country. Philip Levene was not unmoved by the success of this new martial art, perfect for his metaphor of the Superman. Through discipline and practice, karate can effectively transform the body into a formidable weapon.
The word, karate,
means empty hand.
but the hands, though empty, can become more deadly than any weapon.
Deadly blows, known as dim mak, are condemned by karatekas that seduce diabolical spirits aspiring to become black-belted robots. So Levene includes karate in his story, but not without some demanding documentation. Oyama, for a start.
Oyama
is a reference to Masutatsu Oyama, the founder of Kyokushinkai Karate, the typical dojo decor, and above all, a whole vocabulary derived from the martial art. The sensei.
Here I am known as Sensei.
Hajime, literally begin. Yasami, meaning rest. Hamishiwari, with a slight fault that designates the ability to break objects. Of course, there are a few mistakes. Sonomama, a term used to suspend a fight, actually comes from judo. Jinshu.
Yinku.
Inku?
It's a karate blow.
Not a grip, but a vital point just below the nostrils. Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, not a Japanese one.
Son of Confucius.
Speed.
And obake.
I shouldn't try obake.
Which doesn't mean
the foolish one.
But metamorphosis, used for many ghosts in Japanese folklore, or to designate a being who is out of the ordinary. Rather flattering for Mrs. Peel. These are minor errors linked to the novelty of the practice, but they demonstrate Levene's desire to inject very precise Japanese terms into his script. Many of these were removed during filming, just as Steed's condescending attitude towards the Japanese, which was ultimately toned down. Coincidentally or not, Levene wasn't the only member of the Avengers technical team to think about karate chops.
I'm interested in karate.
At the same time, Ray Austin, the stunt coordinator, was trying to convince the production to abandon judo fights and make the new Avenger girl a karate champion. He rehearsed numerous scenes with Diana Rigg, including this fight with Catherine Schofield under the benevolent gaze of her karate master, Chi Su. So Levene's script seems to be going with the wind. Rigorous science fiction, a new take on the robot theme, karate, an anthology villain, and a pair of superhuman Avengers at the top of their game. The only thing missing from this plot is a touch of madness and humor, which the rewrites will try to add in small doses.
How'd you do?
It's also an episode pampered by Laurie Johnson, the series composer, who reworks it several times and signs one of his most remarkable scores. Starting with a theme that reproduces the jerky march of a robot, paced as if powered by electrical impulses with menacing tones ready to integrate the Cybernauts into the soundtrack. The combination of Levene's pen, Ayer's camera, Johnson's score, and Austin's headlines has resulted in one of the most enjoyable episodes, praised even by the show's executives. Director of drama Brian Tesler emphasized his enthusiasm on several occasions and worked hard to ensure that it was one of the first episodes of the season to be scheduled. Although it was the 7th episode produced for season 4, the Cybernauts was the third to be broadcast in the United Kingdom, and above all, the very first episode chosen for the American market, with the onerous task of convincing American audiences of the quality of the series on March 28, 1966. In France, people were less fortunate, having to wait until 1973 before the robots came to smash things up on the first channel there, ORTF, ironically making the episode Never Never Say Die the first introduction of the Cybernauts to French audiences. The creature has now been unleashed. No one could have predicted the consequences of its release. The most remarkable of these is also the least obvious. Cybernaut, a term widely used today, had in fact never been used before the episode was broadcast, making Philip Levene the creator of this neologism, a word created for and by the series, which it includes in its own vocabulary in an epilogue that seems to be a wink from the producers to Philip Levene's invention.
It moves in the dark, it leaves no mark, it's as hard as steel. 9 down. Now what would that be, Mrs. Peel?
Cybernaut.
Oh.